Are you coming? See how it works is, the train moves, not the station.
Hi there, and welcome to Baseball by Design. I am SportsLogos.net minor league baseball correspondent Paul Caputo, broadcasting live, as always, from the Sunday Helmet Hall of Fame in my basement in Fort Collins, Colorado. This week on Baseball by Design, we're going to be talking about the Cleburne Railroaders, who play in Cleburne, Texas. They are a member of the Independent Professional American Association. Later on in this episode, I will be speaking with Mayor Scott Kane, not only the mayor of Cleburne, Texas, but the author of Cleburne Baseball, A Railroader History. And of course, I will be speaking with Dan Simon of Studio Simon with one of his weekly Studio Simon Stumper trivia questions. Right now, I am so pleased to welcome Kay Goodell to the podcast. Kay is the general manager of the Cleburne Railroaders. Kay, good morning. How are you doing?
Good morning. I'm great. How are you?
I am doing very well. I'm very excited to be talking about the Railroaders. This team has been a lot of fun. They've sort of made a splash in the American Association when you all jumped in back in 2017.
Yes. Yeah. So 2017 was kind of the inaugural season, but a lot of history dating back to 1906 was huge for us. And that's where kind of it truly started.
Truly started. So, okay, well, let's start there then. 1906. What was that team?
That was actually the Cleburne Railroaders. They were part of the Texas League. So 1906 and 1908, they won the Texas League championship. And so a lot of history. They played at the Hewlin Park. It used to be Gorman Park down right outside of downtown here in Cleburne. So a lot of history. And back in 2014, when there were talks of bringing a team back, there was no doubt that it was going to be the Cleburne Railroaders coming back. So that's where it all started.
So the team name Railroaders, there are a lot of teams in baseball that have sort of like a railroad themed identity. The railroad industry, the transportation industry at large is obviously such a huge part of American history. What is it about the railroad industry in Cleburne, Texas, that that makes this name so appropriate for an independent professional American Association team?
Yeah, Cleburne has always been a railroad hub, a railroad town. Its growth has been phenomenal throughout the years, but originally the Santa Fe Railroad was here. This is where it started. This is where it was huge. We were the main hub for all of that, and that's really why Railroaders is so important. And there wasn't really a second option for a name or branding when it came to that.
Was there a name the team contest in 2014, or was it just this is what we're going with?
Yep, yeah. So bringing the Railroaders back was the top priority, and that was kind of the main focus there. So they went with it and ran.
So there have been two brands. By the way, 2017 sounds a lot closer to me than it actually is. Like when I look up right now and I realize that 2017 was 8 years ago, I just had a moment where I was just like, well, this can't be possible, right? We can't have had two logos already because that was just a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
But there have been sort of two sets of brands from 2017 to 2020, and then from 2021 on. What was the impetus for updating that brand in 2021?
Yeah, so there had been an ownership change and just wanted to take a lot of ownership in the Railroaders themselves. The orange was the original color, and that was kind of the main change from the original inaugural logo to the red, white, and blue that we have now. Which you can still see the orange all around the ballpark. Orange actually is the city's color. So Cleburne's color scheme, their branding is all orange. And that's where it had played into. And we were just looking for a little bit more of our own identity. And so wanted to come up with our own colors. We thought Texas loves Texas. We all love Texas. And so we played into the Texas scheme a little bit more.
It seems a little bit like that's the law in Texas. If you have a baseball team, you've got to have this, you've got to have the state outline of Texas in your logo there.
Yes, everything Texas focused is going to be just what everyone loves. I remember the first day I visited Texas, I got breakfast at the hotel in the morning, and it was a Texas-shaped waffle maker, and that seems to be normal around here.
The creation of this brand was sort of an interesting story in that the team partnered with Baseballism, and that's I think that's pretty interesting because I don't know how many brands Baseballism has helped create, I associate them with more sort of like commercialized, like baseball slogans, that sort of thing. One of the elements of the brand that sort of carried over from 2017, the original brand, into this secondary brand is Spike, the character who on his own sort of is kind of a funny visual here. He's a railroad spike through a baseball, and he's holding a bat, and he's got like a little cap on and a mustache. Spike is a fan favorite in Cleburne, I understand. Why was it that Spike survived the rebrand? And what else can you tell me about this character who was part of the original logo set?
Yeah, Spike is probably the most important piece of our brand here. That was one of the pieces that in his design and creation was open to the public to kind of create. And he actually was designed by a local firefighter here in Cleburne. And so that is one piece that we really try to play on. We do a lot with our Spike mascot and our logo of Spike. We've kind of evolved him and created a couple different logos of him throughout the years, but keeping the true aspect of how he was created and the importantness of his creation.
There's another character who sort of goes along with Spike now, who is Gandy. Gandy has sort of a different illustrative style, has a sort of different feeling from the other brands. Feels a little maybe like sort of rougher, like intentionally, like that illustrative style, not exactly sort of polished and refined, but more of a, sort of cartoony, hand-drawn feeling about him. Who is Gandy?
Yeah, so Gandy's Spike's probably his best friend. Gandy's a little more retired now because we really do play so much into Spike with his creation background and history. But Gandy makes special appearances throughout the year, which is always really fun. He was really created in a standpoint to kind of have just a secondary pal around. It's really fun to kind of have two mascots than one, and a lot of teams do the wife or the girlfriend or the missus, and this was kind of a different way to play with that.
Are there versions of these characters who run around the stadium? Like, are there actual mascot characters there?
Yes, yep. So we've got Spike and Gandy, and then it's really fun. Once Gandy was created, you'll see along the halls of the front office and the ballpark, illustrations and giant posters of both of them doing different things in a storybook kind of light, which is really fun.
There's a lot of baseball in Texas, and I'm embarrassed to say that, I love a baseball road trip. I try to get to, as many parts of the country as I can. I have only ever been to one baseball game in Texas. It was like 15 years ago. It was a Rangers game because I was in the Dallas area for work. As an Eagles fan, I kind of try to steer clear of the Dallas area. You know how it is. Um, but with all of that baseball in Texas, you're relatively new to the position of general manager there. This coming season will be your first full season as the general manager. What does it take to stand out as an independent professional team in a large state with a lot of different levels of baseball?
Yeah, it takes a lot of focus on kind of more than just baseball, and that's really where I pride myself and pride the organization as we are family with this community. Everyone that comes to our game, we call them family. We don't say fans. And what we do is provide more entertainment for them. So there's plenty of people that don't care for baseball. We still love them. I'm a traditional baseball fan through and through. But at the end of the day, we're here to just be a fun family event center. And that's where we really focus. When you come to a game, there's a petting zoo or a carnival going on, or different types of characters and concerts going on, and Texas days and Ranger nights and things like that. So we play a lot on our Texas homage and the community and the people around us to just make it a fun hangout.
When you say Texas Day, I'm just picturing a lot of like really awesome food. What do you have at Texas Day?
Oh, everything. So we have Texas themed jerseys where we're literally wearing the Texas flag. We play all the Texas music, the Randy Rogers music. We've got the barbecue going, the brisket, all the good stuff. It's so much fun. We've got local artists coming out to perform before the game starts, all the fun things.
Okay, so you worked in Colorado. You were with the Rocky Mountain Vibes for a little while. Obviously, now you're in Texas. I have always sort of remarked on, I grew up in the Philadelphia area. I live in Colorado now. The Colorado flag, I couldn't tell you what the Pennsylvania flag looks like. It just, was not part of our culture. The Colorado flag is everywhere. It's on everything. It's on dog leashes, water bottles, any logo for any Colorado company is going to have, that iconic sea, the red sea with the yellow sun in the middle of it and against that blue background. Texas also is a state that loves its flag. Which state loves its flag more? Since you've worked in both, Colorado versus Texas, which one, not which one has a better flag, but which one loves its flag more?
Yeah, I don't, it's tough. I think it really is flashed in both places so much. When I was in Colorado, I think I have plenty of t-shirts with the flag on it, Rockies t-shirts with the flag on it. And the same with here. It's really fun when you're designing merch. It wasn't a hard change designing merch in Colorado and designing merch here because you play off the flag and you play off the state. And that's what people love. And it's been really fun, but I don't know. Texas loves Texas a lot, so they might be on top with the love and ownership of their flag the most.
I think the line Texas loves Texas a lot is probably right. I think Colorado loves the flag as sort of a design element, and I think Texas might love its flag as sort of a statement of independence or something like that. So, one of the things that you see a lot in affiliated baseball is, alternate logos, identities, sort of, one weekend identities, that sort of thing. I feel like you don't see as much of that necessarily in independent baseball. This team is obviously in the American Association. Is that something you all have explored or are exploring going forward? Is the idea of, alternate identities, or will it be sort of really, doubling down on this, the Railroaders brand?
Yeah, we've tried a few in the past before my time with the crop dusters. There's some fun things that we want to play with. Right now, we've got our Pasta City jerseys, and just really expanding and playing into to that realm is on the table for us. But there's a lot of different things that make Texas Texas, from corn dogs to the crop dusters, the farming, ranch life, all of those things. And so there's a lot of possibilities out there that we're kind of seeing which one might be the best fit for the future.
Are there any hidden elements in any of the logos that people might not know about, at first glance?
Um, I feel like so much stands out in our logo, being a baseball and having the state of Texas directly in it. The star, the KDR, that all hits right on Cleburne on the map of Texas there, and so we kind of made it a little obvious, but it plays to every element of Texas in baseball, truly.
I do love the railroad. It's not a hidden element because it jumps right out at you, as you say. But I love the in the Roundel logo here. You've got, it says Cleburne Railroaders established 1906, the state of Texas, and there's a little railroad spike indicating where Cleburne is there. And then there is a sort of semicircle, three-quarters of a circle maybe of railroad track wrapping around the top of the state there. I assume that is meant to be a letter C for Cleburne. Is that right?
It is.
Okay. Is there a mark? I feel like the between Spike and Gandy and this, highly refined, very professional logo with the state of Texas in it, there are three pretty different sort of visual aesthetics there, three pretty different looks. I see that you're wearing the primary logo on your shirt there, that with the roundel on it. Is there one that you prefer, or is there one that you think? It's probably two different questions. Is there one that you prefer, and is there one that is sort of the most popular in the team store?
I think our circle badge logo, it's very the namesake, the homage piece. So I think that one's really popular. Last year we actually integrated Spike into our Railroader script, and that one seemed to be a really big hit last year. And so we play a lot onto that one as well. That was probably our most used when it comes to marketing and merchandise last season.
Okay. So the K Goodell era is starting now. Do you have any visions for updates to the brand or changes that you might foresee in the future, either with like alternates or with the existing brand?
No changes to the existing brand. I think it's perfect in this community. It's exactly what it needs to be. But excited to have some fun with some new colors and some alternate identities in the future for sure.
Ah, there you go. I like that teaser there. Well, Kay, this has been a ton of fun. I really appreciate it. This is I've been meaning to talk to the team about this logo for a while, so I appreciate you coming on and providing some backstory. Where can folks find you online, and where can folks find the team on the web or on socials and et cetera?
Yeah, we've got all the socials there. I'm heavily on the Railroaders page itself, but it's at Railroader Baseball and railroaderbaseball.com.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kay. We'll hope to expand my list of Texas ballparks that I visited by adding Cleburne sometime in the not too distant future. So I appreciate you coming on, and good luck in the rest of the off season here.
Thank you. You as well.
All right, everyone, welcome back. This is very exciting for me. This is the very first time that I have had a political figure on the Baseball by Design podcast, Mayor Scott Kane, the mayor of Cleburne, Texas. Mayor Kane, good morning. How are you doing?
Good morning, Paul. Yeah, politics and baseball, that's kind of a strange thing, but baseball history is replete with all sorts of baseball politics. So sounds like fun.
Absolutely. Well, you not only are you the mayor of Cleburne, but you have written I would say the definitive text on baseball in Cleburne. You wrote the book Cleburne Baseball: A Railroader History. So I have all sorts of questions. I'm not sure whether to start with the history of baseball or the history of railroads. They're surely intertwined. Let's start with the history of railroads in Cleburne, because that's, formative, going back more than a century, was the inspiration for that original team in Cleburne that you wrote about in this book in 1906. What is the role of the railroad industry to the history and to contemporary Cleburne?
Well, Paul, in 1898, Santa Fe awarded Cleburne the opportunity to build its railroad shops. We had the largest shops west of the Mississippi, and the community exploded overnight. In fact, by 1911, there was a lot of talk about Cleburne surpassing Dallas as a large city at one point. Obviously, that didn't happen, but railroads were instrumental and really vital. You can talk to anyone who's lived in Cleburne for decades, and they will have friends or family who work for the railroads. And kind of a funny story about the railroads in the 1960s. Santa Fe was going through a change of its fleet, and the shop foreman went to Topeka and told them, "Hey, my shops can transform your locomotives." And he came back and got an award which saved the shops. They closed in 1988, but it saved the shops. And it prompted some of the workers to say, "Well, how are we going to do that? He's committed us to change the whole fleet." And one of the other workers says, "Well, all of the outlines and designs are on the outhouse wall." So kind of a funny story, but Cleburne is known for designing the CF7. So when you look at locomotives today, a lot of that design was the creation right here in Cleburne, Texas. So railroading's been part of our history, and it's kind of a neat background, if you will.
So this book that you wrote was published in 2017, which coincides with the debut of the new franchise. So most of this book was written about, baseball prior to the current iteration of the Cleburne Railroaders. I definitely want to talk about your role in bringing baseball back to Cleburne, but I'm interested in what inspired you to write this book about the history of baseball in Cleburne.
Well, when we were working on bringing baseball back, and I know we'll get to that in a minute, and that's kind of an interesting story how it all came about. But during that process, I was doing some research to try to sell the Fort Worth Cats organization to come to Cleburne. And I saw the 1906 team, and we all had known about that. But when I started digging deeper, I found other professional teams, the Chicago White Sox came to Cleburne in 1911 and saw this rich history. And I thought, nobody really talks about it. I didn't know about it. And so I started digging into the newspaper articles and pulling all that. And as I was researching it and pulling it all together to try to get baseball back, I thought, we need to preserve this history. There's a lot of really cool stories. And so that was really the inspiration to get the ball rolling. And as we progressed, I didn't want to write just the facts and figures. I wanted to tell the story of the baseball players, the teams, the community, and something that everybody could relate to.
I have to ask this question. I'm curious about it. Ivan Pudge Rodriguez, I'm assuming the very same Pudge Rodriguez, wrote the foreword to this book. How did you get Pudge Rodriguez involved in the project?
Yeah, a lot of the people that were helping us bring baseball back, Donnie Nelson and a close personal friend of Pudge's, they brought Pudge to some meetings, and I got to meet him and talk to him. And so we talked about the book a little bit, and we talked about his background and his history. He's really a neat guy. And, I in the 90s, Pudge was one of my favorite players. So we got to be friends and just talking about it. And I told him about what I was doing with the book. And I asked him to kind of tell a little bit of his background that people may not know and to share that. And he agreed and was gracious about it. And what was really cool, it was right at the time that he was up for the Hall of Fame balloting. So it was a very busy time in his life, and he was gracious enough to do that. And even came out. In fact, it was really exciting on the year that he was inducted into the Hall of Fame. He went to 3 baseball stadiums to catch a ceremonial pitch. Went to the ballpark in Arlington, went to Tiger Stadium where he played, and he came to Cleburne. And I actually got to be on second base and catch the ball he threw in. Well, and as we were walking out, we were talking, and I said, Pudge, I normally don't ask this, but would you mind signing the ball that I caught that you threw to me? He says, oh, it's no problem. But catch, you snow cone it. And my response was, well, you rainbowed it. I was expecting a heater coming in, but yeah.
I was going to ask if you got the tag down at the, on the runner at second base there.
I was so nervous. I was sitting there thinking, don't drop the ball. That would be embarrassing. The stadium was packed, and it was a lot of fun. Pudge is great. I love Pudge.
One little note about the book that I just love, and you don't need to comment on this, but as a designer, I love this. The subtitle, A Railroader History, is set in a font that is called Ballpark Wiener. And I love that font. I've actually used it myself on projects. So it's a fun one for sure. Well, so fast forward, obviously, there's a lot of baseball. There's a lot of history, in the early 20th century. Fast forward to 2017, or probably years before 2017, the process of bringing baseball back to Cleburne in the form of this independent American Association team. How long before 2017 did that process begin, and what was involved in that?
Yeah, it was about a year and a half. What really started it, I was trying to find something to be an economic driver. Wasn't really even thinking baseball. And we had the location picked out as a real key part of the community where the depot sits today. And I get a Facebook message from a local florist who's a friend of mine. And he sends me a message. He says, hey, I hear the Fort Worth Cats are getting kicked out of LaGrave. Why don't you see if they want to come to Cleburne? Ha, ha, ha. So I literally picked up the phone and I talked to a guy named Robbie Phineas that was the general manager for the Cats. And he answered the phone, and they were literally packing up the last few boxes to leave LaGrave. So I talked to him about it, and we had some meetings, and that's when I started really digging into the history of baseball, and we shared that and went through that. It was a bumpy ride at times. It looked like things were going to materialize, and then they would fall apart. And then Donnie Nelson, who was the general manager of the Mavericks at the time, he was brought in as a potential investor or partner. And we were sitting at a coffee machine, and I gave him my 90-second elevator pitch about baseball in Cleburne, and we talked about it, and he kind of fell in love with the story. And from there, it just kind of grew and developed as we figured out how to bring it together and bring it back. Culminated in a really exciting time because ultimately we took it to the voters in the community. And it was funny. I had a lot of people that thought, you're asking for a $25 million bond and a new sales tax to do it. No way, it's not going to happen. And we had a record turnout. People stood in line, took their kids to go with them for a historic vote. And the community overwhelmingly said, yeah, let's do this. Let's bring it back. And It was a lot of fun. I can tell you stories about the association, and they had a hard time understanding how a little town like Cleburne could support indie ball because our numbers, we're the smallest city in the American Association, but we have one of, I think, the second or third largest market because of the DFW area. So that was a lot of fun getting to talk to them about history and a lot of really cool people.
The decision to reprise that name, the Cleburne Railroaders, how much conversation was there around that? You know, are we going to reprise this historic name, or are we going to come up with something new? I mean, there's a lot of sort of wacky fun out there in minor league baseball, so there's probably, you know, all sorts of things you could have played off in the town of Cleburne. Were you involved in that process, and what were those conversations to keep that name?
Yeah, I was definitely involved, and quite frankly, it was never anything that it was never really up for debate. You know, we already had the history and the tradition, and you know, Cleburne's a very proud town, like other communities. We love our community, love our history and our heritage, and you know, we looked at the story as it was unfolding of the Railroaders, and we said, hey, let's honor the history and the heritage, and let's stick with it. You know, it was really cool. We did get the community involved and had a contest for the mascot, Spike. That design was community driven, and even the Railroader font and the name and a lot of those things were community driven. But it was never a debate or discussion to go with something new or fancy. We just wanted to keep that Railroader heritage. You know, one of the interesting things when we finally did get the bond to pass and we were ready to break ground, it was a very big community event. When we had rolled out the concept to the community, we had probably 500 people show up to see it. We had the whole team, Donnie Nelson, and everybody was there to introduce it to the community. So when we did the groundbreaking, we went out literally in a turnip patch. And we created some baselines. It was kind of filled of dreams motif. The high school band was there to play. I had my council members. We had hundreds, close to 1,000 people there. And we had our council lined on the bases. I threw out the first pitch, and our Congressman Roger Williams that played for the Braves, you know, he was at bat. Donnie Nelson was calling balls and strikes. And it was kind of funny. I told Roger to crank one over the band because I know he could do it. And he was like, I don't know, you know, so he caught the ball and he tapped one back into the field. But it was a good time for the whole community. It was a lot of fun.
Well, so just one last question for you here, and then I can let you get back to the important work that you're doing. The team now, where it's 8 years later, and you know the team is pretty well established, and doesn't, you know, it seems like this is one of the fixtures in the American Association. What does the team mean to the community now? You know, it's essentially, how's it all turned out since then?
You know, it's really exciting. The community loves the team, and you've got, you know, your diehard fans that are there all the time. What we really enjoy is, you know, having baseball and when we built the stadium, I put myself to where I could see people coming in because we had built that stadium in record time in 10 months, which was crazy. And the community didn't know what to expect. So as I saw them coming in, we knew it was going to be great for family and a place to get together. But I always tell folks, you know, we really don't have assigned seating at the depot. It's more of suggested seating. People get up, mill around, talk to friends, but the outlying communities have really taken ownership as well. And we're really proud for them to celebrate their heritage. But we've got a new chapter with new ownership with some of the owners of the Texas Rangers. And so we've got that close connection, you know, and my hope is that we will continue to build that strong connection and move forward. But the depots really, or we call it La Moderna Field now, is really a great place to catch a slice of Americana, you know, with baseball and family. And, you know, it's pretty amazing. If I can leave you with one story that
Oh, yeah.
you know, I wrote about this in the book, but for your listeners, you know, if you can think about how baseball gets started in a community, imagine in 1906, the Cleburne Railroaders are hosting the Fort Worth Panthers for the first time. And you've got about 200 or so cowboys that rode in on horseback to watch baseball. And they're lined around the outfield fence line. you get to the bottom of the ninth inning and we're down. We score a couple of runs, and so it's tied. Is 2-2 or 3-3? I can't remember. We get a runner on first, and we use some small baseball tactics. Move them to third, 2 outs, bottom of the ninth. We got a runner at third, and the batter hits a shallow pop up into center field, and easy out. Right? Not on that day. On that day, some of the Cowboys took issue with what was going on, and they drew down and literally shot the ball out of the air. Now, imagine you're an umpire, 1906, in a rough and tumble railroad town, 200 Cowboys loaded with 2 pistols and 8 shots apiece. There's no such thing as fan interference. What do? You point to the runner, call him home, and you get on the train and you get the heck out of Dodge. So, it's always interesting. We don't have that kind of excitement at the depot, but there's always excitement. You never know what's going to happen, and it's lots of fun. So want to invite your listeners to come catch a game at the depot, and I promise you won't be disappointed.
Well, it sounds like a great place to catch a ball game. This story, to me, sort of epitomizes how baseball and history and culture at large, how they're all sort of intertwined with one another. And so it's a really terrific story. I know that you're very busy, so I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to come chat with me. The book is called Cleburne Baseball, A Railroader History. Is there anywhere else on social media or online or anything that you want to direct folks to come find you?
You can find me. Just Google me, and it's out there. But like I said, just want to encourage folks to have a good time. And Paul, I appreciate the time to visit with you. It's always a great day in Cleburne, Texas.
Mayor Kane, thanks for being my first ever political figure on Baseball by Design here. I appreciate that.
Sounds good. Thanks, Paul. Have a great one.
All right, everyone, welcome back. It is time once again for Studio Simon Stumpers, the segment in which noted designer Dan Simon of Studio Simon takes a break from his very busy schedule to bring us a trivia question every single week without fail. Dan Simon, hello. Thank you for being here. How are you doing this morning?
I am doing fantastically. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan, for being here. We were just talking about how busy your schedule is this time of year, and with all the Major League Baseball deadlines and whatnot. So it is, I don't say it lightly when I say thanks for being here and taking time out of your schedule. 100 plus and counting of these Studio Simon Stumpers.
Well, you're welcome, and it's my pleasure. Actually, it's a good diversion from keeping my nose to the grindstone on my work. It's nice to have something a little different that I actually enjoy doing. So let's not digress too much. Let's keep things on track.
Oh, goodness sakes, look what you did.
And speaking of keeping things on track, we have a railroad themed identity to stump about here. And railroad themed identities are not necessarily uncommon in the world of baseball. You've got the Round Rock Express, you've got the Altoona Curve. In the independent ranks, you have the Gary South Shore Railcats. In the summer collegiate leagues, you've got the Eau Claire Express. And there have been others in the past. And oh, by the way, speaking of others in the past, the Reading Fightin' Phils, who used to just be called the Reading Phillies. Now, do you remember that they used to have a train in their logo?
I have a T-shirt with that logo on it, with the Phillies script worst R and the train sort of coming over the top, and then they had a primary logo with the train coming through it. If you're from Pennsylvania or have ever played Monopoly, you know the Reading Railroad very well. So having a train identity associated with Reading, Pennsylvania was a no-brainer for a little while for that team.
Okay, well, today's Studio Simon Stumper includes 3 teams whose cities have have railroad histories.
Okay.
And at one time, 2 of these 3 teams had a railroad themed brand identity. They do not currently. So our studio assignment stumper today asks, which of these current minor league teams did not have at one time a different name with an accompanying railroad themed identity?
Okay.
So was it A, the Syracuse Mets, B, the Louisville Bats, or C, the Omaha Storm Chasers?
All right, Dan, this is one that I know from actual knowledge here. The Syracuse Mets were at one point the Syracuse Chiefs and had a railroad theme. They had various identities associated with that Chiefs brand, but one of them was a railroad brand. The Omaha Storm Chasers have one of the I don't know, sort of weirdest associations that you. I kind of love this story. The Omaha Golden Spikes were named for. I know way too much about this story, Dan. The Omaha Golden Spikes were named for the golden spike that was driven to unite the Transcontinental Railroad in Utah, in Promontory Summit, Utah, just north of Great Salt Lake, not in Omaha. Omaha is right where like the easternmost portion of the Transcontinental Railroad started. So they're associated with the Transcontinental Railroad. They were named for something that happened in Utah, though, not something that happened in Omaha. And so no one had any idea why they were called the Golden Spikes. So I forget what the third option was, Dan, but it was that one. It was
The Louisville, my hometown Louisville Bats.
your
Oh,
Louisville Bats. The River Bats old brand had nothing to do with or the Louisville. They were the Cardinals too, right? The Louisville Cardinals. Were they ever the Louisville Cardinals?
they were the Louisville Redbirds.
They were the Redbirds. Oh, they were the right. Okay, they
They
were the
were Cardinals,
Redbirds, and they were the
Cardinals
River Bats.
affiliate,
Yeah,
Louisville's Redbirds. And then there were the Louisville River Bats,
River Bats.
and then
Yeah,
just shortened it to Bats, which
yeah,
is
yeah,
what,
yeah.
okay.
So Louisville is the answer.
Well, okay, good on you. You are correct again. And kudos to you for knowing that detail about the Golden Spikes. Not just that, the former Omaha Royals and current Omaha Storm Chasers were once known as the Omaha Golden Spikes, but the fact that indeed they were named after the ceremonial 17.6 carat golden spike that was driven into the rails, or technically, I guess it would have been into the ties that joined the rails of the first continental railroad across the United States, and it is in Promontory Summit, Utah.
Yeah.
But here's the connection to Omaha. It where they drove those rails is where two rail lines met, and one was the Central Pacific Railroad from Sacramento. The other was the Union Pacific Railroad from Omaha.
Wasn't it
So
actually Iowa? And I'm telling you, Dan, I don't know where I accumulated all this knowledge, but I think it was actually just across the river in Iowa that it started, not in Omaha.
there is an Iowa, there is something about Iowa, but it's
Basically Omaha.
yeah, well, yeah. And so yeah, there you go with that. Now they were the Omaha Royals from 1969 to 1998, so 30 seasons. Then for a brief 3 seasons, 1999 to 2001, they were the Golden Spikes, before going back to the Omaha Royals in 2002 to 2010, and they've been the Storm Chasers since 2011. The Syracuse Mets used to be called the Syracuse Chiefs. They were the Syracuse Chiefs from 1961 to 1996. And they had, as I believe you mentioned, a Native American themed brand identity. But then in 1997, they changed their name. Do you remember this? To the Syracuse Sky Chiefs,
Mhm.
where and they were the Sky Chiefs from 1997 through 2006, so for 10 seasons. And they had well, I'll ask you, do you remember what the visual focal point was of that brand identity?
Oh, for the Sky Chiefs?
Yes.
It was it explicitly? I'm picturing like a World War II airplane, but maybe it wasn't a World War II, or maybe it was just but I believe it was an airplane.
It was, but it was a hybrid airplane baseball bat. So its
Oh,
fuselage was a baseball bat, and its wings also looked like wood. Um, and it was, well, that's what they had. And then in 2007, they went to their train themed, they shortened the name back to the Syracuse Chiefs and had a train themed identity which they used from 2007 through 2018, before changing, being purchased by the Mets and changing their name to the Mets. And for those who don't know, have your Baseball Palooza trips ever taken you to Syracuse?
not to Syracuse. No, no. We've talked about doing like an upstate New York one, but we've never made it happen.
Okay, well, there are train railroad tracks just behind the left field fence there, and freight cars go back and forth there. You can see them during games. So there's the reason for that train theme. So, oh, and the reason for Louisville being included as a possible answer, is because we had the Louisville and Nashville Railroad here in Louisville and down in Nashville, and I don't know, perhaps beyond. And one of your destinations of your Baseball Palooza trips has been Louisville. I went to the game there with you and your buddies. And if you remember, the stadium is a beautiful brick stadium, and part of the stadium is a repurposed former train shed.
That's pretty cool. That would be fun it would have been fun to have known that going there to see that. That's very cool. The Scranton Wilkes-Barre Railroaders obviously have train connections, and the Scranton Wilkes-Barre, I think, was the first city to have an electric trolley. But Dan, I feel like I need to come clean with you here, because I've told you before that I never research these because there's no way to predict sort of where you were going to go with them. And that is indeed the case. I did not research this, but several years ago, I was contacted by the National Ballpark Museum, which is this funky little spot, catty corner to Coors Field here in Denver. And they were working in concert with a museum here in Denver called the Forney Museum of Transportation, which is a little tiny, like, sort of transportation museum, aviation, automobiles, railroad history. And they asked me, the National Ballpark Museum asked me if I would go down there with my book, The Story Behind the Nickname, to do a talk on minor league baseball names and their association with the railroad industry. It's sort of part of my theory that you can tell the story of America through understanding minor league baseball logos and nicknames. And I started the talk with a full explanation of the history of the Transcontinental Railroad and the joining of those two particular tracks, those two particular lines in Utah. And so that, for whatever reason, that story of the Golden Spike and like some of the details about sort of like where it happened and when it happened, I have just stuck in my head. And so when you started asking this question, I was all of a sudden thrown back into that half-hour talk I did on minor league baseball and the railroad industry at the Forney Museum of Transportation with the National Ballpark Museum here in Denver. So that was you walked right into my wheelhouse with that one, Dan, as it were.
Well, and good on you again. So, yeah, well, I was, as I think you know, I listened to every episode of the Baseball by Design podcast, not just so I can hear my own voice doing these stumpers, but rather because it's obviously a subject that interests me. And it really really hit me in this most recent episode I listened to this week about how you really do tell the story of America through these minor league baseball teams. Well, the teams do, and then you bring it to life, to light, whatever. By you doing this podcast, it's like I would never have known about all these different cities and what they're about. With your baseball palooza trips, you visit a lot of cities. So you do get around, you get around more than I do. And I've been to, I guess, a lot of cities in my life for baseball games and other reasons. But there's a lot of cities I'll never visit, but they've all got a story.
And you can visit these places without really learning the story, right? Like, especially on Baseball Palooza, we sort of get in, find a brew pub, go to a game. It's a fun time. But like, if you're the episode that you're referencing at the time of this recording might be the Traverse City Pit Spitters, like talking to Kat Pay from the National Cherry Festival, like was so much fun for me, like learning all about cherries in Michigan and that sort of thing. So agriculture, nature, industry, all of these things that these minor league baseball teams have these great names for. It's been a journey, and it's been so much fun for me. It's been a terrific outlet, and it's been fun to have you along for the ride, Dan, as you have been. We determined you've been the designer guest on almost 30 episodes. I think we said 29 episodes at the time of this recording, and you've done now more than 100 of these stumpers. So, certainly you have been part of this journey of discovery, and I appreciate that very much because, as we said, you're quite busy and you've got like a full-time job of designing logos that we're telling these stories about. So, as always, Dan, I appreciate you being here, and we'll talk to you again next week as part of this journey of discovery. Go find Dan on Instagram at studio_Simon. Dan, thank you so much. We decided we're going to work on a sign off for you, so we need like some zippy catchphrase now from you to take us out.
I don't have it yet, so I'm just going to say thank you, Paul, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next week with another stumper.
See you next week.